In every corner of this quaint, unassuming town, there's an unspoken trust in those who wear the badge, a silent pact that they will always uphold the values we hold dear. But beneath this veneer of safety and order, a shadow was growing, a darkness that would soon challenge the very fabric of this community's trust. Sheriff Evan Carter, the man whose name once echoed with respect and authority, had become the keeper of a secret so profound, it threatened to unravel everything. Here, in this place where the streets are lined with the laughter of children and the nods of neighbors, a story was unfolding, one that would test the limits of loyalty and expose the depths of betrayal. What happens when the guardian of our peace harbors a secret that could destroy the peace itself? This is not just a tale of crime, it's a narrative of how power, when twisted, can lead to the most unimaginable outcomes, shaking the foundations of a town that believed in the sanctity of its protectors. In the heart of this narrative, we find Evan Carter, the sheriff whose name resonates with authority and respect throughout the town. To the community, he is more than just an officer, he's the cornerstone of their security, a man whose uniform symbolizes the very essence of law and order. His life, a tapestry of dedication to his role, to his wife Karen, and to his daughter Sophie, had been one that others looked to with admiration, a model of integrity and family values. But there's another thread in this story, one that ties directly to the sheriff's world yet exists in the shadows. Lila Thompson, a 17-year-old with dreams as vast as the sky, her ambition palpable in every step she took towards a future in law enforcement. Lila, with her sharp mind and clear vision, was not just another teenager in this town, she was the daughter of Deputy Mark Thompson, a man who had stood beside Evan Carter for years, their bond forged in shared duty and mutual respect. Mark Thompson, with his easy smile and unwavering loyalty, had been a figure of reliability under Evan's command. Their relationship went beyond that of superior and subordinate, they were friends, confidants, their families intertwined through countless barbecues, shared laughter, and the comfort of knowing they were not alone in their commitment to protect. Mark's trust in Evan was absolute, a trust born from years of camaraderie, from the belief that they were both fighting on the same side of justice. Karen Carter, the woman who had built a life with Evan, knew him as the man she had married, a father, a husband, a protector. Her world was one of balance, juggling the roles of wife, mother, and community member, her daily life a dance around Evan's often unpredictable schedule. Yet, beneath her proud smiles and the stability she exuded, she was unaware of the storm brewing within her own home, oblivious to the dark secrets her husband harbored. Then there's Sophie Carter, the youthful echo of her father's laughter, a daughter who viewed her dad not just as the sheriff but as her hero. Her friendship with Lila was the stuff of childhood stories, a bond that seemed unbreakable, forged in the innocence of play and the ambitions of youth. Sophie's world was one where her father was the epitome of all that was good, a belief that would soon be shattered by the revelations that lay ahead. These characters, each with their own role in this unfolding drama, form the core of a story where trust, ambition, and familial bonds are tested. From the admired sheriff to the ambitious young girl, from the loyal deputy to the unsuspecting wife, and to the daughter caught in the crossfire of betrayal, this narrative weaves through their lives, showing how interconnected destinies can lead to the most unexpected of tragedies. Here, in this small town where life moves at a pace dictated by the school bell and the closing of local shops, the seeds of a dark affair were planted one afternoon when Lila Thompson stepped into the sheriff's station. It was just another day for her, a routine visit to meet her father, Deputy Mark Thompson, after school. But for Sheriff Evan Carter, watching from his office window, something about Lila had changed. No longer the child he had seen grow up, she was now a young woman, her confidence as evident as her ambition. This moment, seemingly ordinary, was the spark that would ignite a chain of events leading to destruction. The initial interaction was innocent enough. Lila, with her books in hand, smiled as she entered, the familiarity of the station like a second home. She waited, chatting casually with the receptionist, her laughter echoing through the hall. But Evan, observing from a distance, felt a shift within him, a curiosity he couldn't name, a fascination he knew he should not entertain. Yet, he did. With Mark Thompson out on an assignment, Evan saw an opportunity to engage with Lila, to extend an olive branch of mentorship under the guise of friendliness. He called out to her, his voice carrying the warmth of a family friend, inviting her to wait in his office for her father. Lila, trusting him implicitly, followed without hesitation. The office, adorned with the artifacts of a law enforcement career, was a testament to Evan's life, and as she sat, her eyes wandered over the commendations and photos, unaware of the thoughts stirring in Evan. What began as a conversation about school and her future aspirations quickly turned into a calculated move by Evan. He listened, not just to her words but to the ambition in her voice, seeing in her a reflection of his younger self. With a masterstroke of manipulation, he offered her mentorship, suggesting that he could guide her towards her dreams, perhaps even secure her a spot in a prestigious law enforcement program. For Lila, this was an opportunity, a chance to leap ahead in her career aspirations, something she wouldn't have imagined possible at her age. Evan's proposal was cloaked in the allure of success, in the promise of personal guidance from someone with his experience and connections. He positioned himself not just as a mentor but as a gatekeeper to her dreams, subtly weaving himself into her life under the pretense of support. His words were chosen with precision, each one designed to build trust, to make her feel special, chosen. Lila, eager and naive to the true intentions behind his offer, accepted without a second thought, seeing only the potential mentorship could bring. This was how Evan began to shape their interactions, each meeting carefully orchestrated to deepen his influence over her, using his authority to blind her to his true motives. His mentorship was not about fostering her growth but about pulling her into his orbit, where he could control and manipulate, where he could indulge in desires he knew were wrong. From that first conversation in his office, Evan's manipulation was set in motion, a slow, insidious dance where every step was calculated to keep Lila close, to make her dependent on his guidance, all while she believed she was on the path to achieving her dreams. Under the guise of career guidance, the relationship between Evan Carter and Lila Thompson grew more complex, hidden beneath layers of secrecy. Evan, with the cunning of a seasoned manipulator, painted their meetings as exclusive sessions, a privilege that not everyone could claim. He instilled in Lila the notion that their time together was special, that it was something others might not understand or appreciate. He whispered to her that ambition like hers needed protection, that the less people knew about their mentorship, the safer her dreams were from those who might wish to hinder her progress. Lila, still caught in the web of trust she held for Evan, saw no reason to question his motives. To her, these meetings were the golden thread leading her to her future in law enforcement, a path illuminated by the experience and influence of the sheriff himself. She agreed to keep their sessions secret, her mind filled with visions of becoming someone extraordinary, someone who could make a difference. The secrecy only added to the allure, making her feel part of something significant, something beyond the ordinary. As weeks turned into months, the meetings evolved, no longer confined to the sterile environment of Evan's office but moving to more discreet locations, under the pretext of needing a quieter, more focused setting. Here, away from prying eyes, Evan's manipulation took on a more personal tone. He began to ask about her life outside of school, about her fears, her dreams, her relationships, weaving himself into the fabric of her personal world. Each conversation, each piece of advice, was laced with a mix of flattery and concern, designed to make Lila feel valued, understood, and uniquely cared for. The line between mentor and confidant blurred, and in this space, Lila's emotional dependency on Evan grew. She came to him not only for career advice but for comfort, for validation, mistaking his manipulation for genuine care. Every word of encouragement, every piece of advice, was like a drop of water in the desert of her ambition, making her thirst for more. Evan became her beacon, her guide through the fog of youth and uncertainty, a figure she trusted implicitly, someone she believed was invested in her success. But what Lila didn't see was how this dependency was orchestrated. Evan's control over her was not just about her career. It was about her loyalty to him, her secrecy, her silence. He crafted an environment where she felt she needed him, where his approval was the air she breathed, his guidance the path she walked. He was the architect of her dreams, but also of her isolation from those who might see through his facade. In this dance of manipulation, Lila's life began to revolve around these secret meetings. Her friends noticed her pulling away, her focus narrowing down to what she believed was her path to success, not realizing it was a path laid by Evan. Her father, Mark, sensed a change but couldn't pinpoint the cause, attributing it to the pressures of growing up and the ambitions of youth. Meanwhile, Evan's influence over Lila deepened, each meeting cementing her emotional attachment to him, blinding her to the reality of what was truly happening. As their relationship moved from mentorship to something far more personal, Lila's world became increasingly centered on Evan. She trusted him, believed in him, and in doing so, she stepped further into the trap he had set, one where her dreams were tied to his desires, where her trust was the key to his control. But beneath this facade of mentorship, something dark was taking root, a secret affair that would eventually lead to a tragedy neither could have foreseen. The shock came like a bolt from the clear sky of Lila Thompson's world when she discovered she was pregnant. At first, the signs were dismissed as stress or exhaustion from her rigorous pursuit of a future in law enforcement. But as the truth became undeniable, her heart raced with a mix of fear, confusion, and a faint hope that perhaps this could be something beautiful. In her mind, she turned to the one person who had been guiding her through her ambitions, Sheriff Evan Carter, expecting support, expecting a shared vision of a future. The revelation was made during one of their clandestine meetings, in a place where they had often discussed her career plans. Lila, her voice trembling with the weight of her confession, told Evan about the pregnancy. She anticipated a moment of unity, a plan for their future together, but what met her was not the warmth of shared dreams but the cold grip of panic. Evan's face, which had always been composed, now mirrored the chaos of his thoughts. The very foundation of his life, his reputation, his family, seemed to crumble before him. Evan's initial response was a flurry of denial, his mind racing through the implications. His career, his marriage to Karen, his relationship with his daughter Sophie, all hung in the balance. He saw this not as the beginning of a new life but as the end of everything he had built. In a voice that betrayed his fear, he told Lila they couldn't let this happen, that no one could know. The words were sharp, cutting through the air like a warning shot, a stark contrast to the comforting tones he had used before. He pressed upon her the need to terminate the pregnancy, his words laced with urgency and desperation. "This can't happen," he repeated, his voice a mix of command and plea. He painted the scenario in bleak colors, how it would ruin him, destroy their lives, how they could never recover from such a scandal. He offered no comfort, no shared responsibility, only a demand for action, for secrecy, for an end to this unexpected complication. Lila, caught in the crossfire of her emotions, initially wavered, the shock of his reaction mingling with her own fears. But as the reality settled, her resolve hardened. She had come to him seeking support, believing in the bond they had formed, even if it was built on manipulation. Now, faced with his true colors, she found her voice, her agency. With tears in her eyes but a firmness in her tone, she refused. "No," she said, her voice clear, "I won't do that. This is our child, Evan." Her refusal was not just a rejection of his demand but a reclaiming of her autonomy. She spoke of the child as a part of her, a part of them, something she couldn't simply erase because of his fear. She had believed in him, trusted him, but in this moment, the scales fell from her eyes. She saw not the mentor but the man terrified of exposure, of losing his grip on the life he had so carefully curated. Evan's panic only deepened with her refusal. He tried reasoning, begging, even threatening subtly, but Lila's decision was made. She wouldn't let him dictate this part of her life, not anymore. The pregnancy was a line drawn in the sand, one she wouldn't cross for him. This was the moment when the affair, which had been hidden in shadows, began to cast a long, threatening shadow over both their lives, setting the stage for a tragedy that would soon unfold. The weight of desperation settled on Evan Carter like a shroud, his mind a storm of fear and calculation. With Lila's refusal to terminate the pregnancy, his world seemed poised on the edge of collapse. Every scenario he envisioned led to his downfall. His career, his family, his very identity would be irreparably damaged if this secret became public. In the quiet of his office, in the solitude of his thoughts, a dark plan began to take shape, one that whispered of finality, of the only way out he could see. Desperate measures were what Evan decided upon, his mind convincing him that this was the only path to salvation. He needed to eliminate the problem entirely, to ensure that no one would ever connect the dots back to him. The thought of murder, once unthinkable, now became his strategy for survival. He knew the terrain of cover-ups, knew how to manipulate investigations, but this was a different kind of crime, one that would require him to cross a line from which there was no return. The night of betrayal was meticulously planned. Evan invited Lila to a secluded cabin under the guise of a special career discussion, a move to ostensibly help her prepare for a significant step in her future. He chose a location far from prying eyes, where the whispers of their secret could be buried as deeply as the cabin was hidden in the woods. Lila, still clinging to the remnants of trust, agreed, excited about what she believed would be a pivotal moment in her journey. They met as the day's light faded into evening, the cabin's isolation providing an illusion of privacy and intimacy. Evan prepared everything with the precision of one planning his own salvation. A dinner was set, the table laid out with the charm of normalcy, but beneath the facade, his intent was lethal. He served her wine, the bottle a decoy for the drug concealed in his pocket, a substance that would render her unconscious, vulnerable to his final act. As they talked, the conversation flowed with the wine, Lila unaware of the poison in her glass. She spoke of her dreams, of her hopes for the future, her voice filled with the naivety of youth, believing still in the mentorship she thought they shared. Evan listened, his responses calculated, his mind on the task at hand. With the right moment, he refilled her glass, the drug slipping silently into the wine, dissolving into her fate. Soon, the effects began to show, her words slurred, her eyelids heavy, confusion clouding her bright eyes. She murmured about not feeling well, her trust in Evan blinding her to the danger. He offered false comfort, his voice steady, his actions deliberate, as he watched her succumb to the drug. When she was finally unconscious, the mask of mentor fell away completely, revealing the predator beneath. With her limp in his arms, a dark echo of the days he had carried her as a child during family gatherings, he moved her to his truck. The drive to the chosen spot was silent, the only sound the hum of the engine and the racing of his heart. He had selected a place in the woods where no one would look, where secrets could stay buried, where he could end this threat to his life. In the stillness of the night, under the indifferent gaze of the stars, Evan carried out his plan. He placed his hands over her mouth and nose, the struggle brief and one-sided, as the drug had already done much of the work. When the silence returned, when her life was extinguished, he set to work, digging a grave with the same hands that had once sworn to protect. He buried her, along with his conscience, under the cold earth, believing this act would bury his secret forever. But in the quiet of the forest, where the trees stood as silent witnesses, the truth was not as easily hidden as the body. The night of betrayal had left its mark, not just on the ground but on Evan's soul, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to his undoing. With Lila Thompson declared missing, a wave of concern swept through the town, igniting a search that would be led by none other than Sheriff Evan Carter. He stepped forward, the very picture of authority and concern, rallying the community, his deputies, and volunteers to scour the area for any sign of her. But his leadership was a facade, a performance designed to control the narrative, to direct the search away from the truth he had buried in the woods. Evan's strategy was meticulous. He organized search parties, directed them to places he knew would yield nothing, suggested theories of her running away or meeting someone in secret, all while ensuring that the focus remained far from the secluded spot where Lila lay. He was the one who mapped out the routes, chose the locations, and when the search teams neared areas he feared could reveal his secret, he would pull them back with new leads or sightings that needed checking, always just enough to keep the operation moving but never close to the truth. He played the part of the distressed sheriff, his voice filled with the right amount of worry, his actions those of a man desperate to find a missing girl. He knew how to manipulate the situation, how to use his badge to control the flow of information, to keep the investigation from ever touching the edges of his crime. Every press conference, every update, was a piece of his cover-up, a step in maintaining the illusion. The manipulation of trust went deeper as Evan stayed close to the Thompson family, particularly to Mark, Lila's father. He was there, offering his shoulder for Mark to lean on, his home a place where the grieving parents could gather strength, his words a balm to their fears. He spoke of hope, of not giving up, of doing everything in his power to bring Lila back. To Mark, who had trusted Evan like a brother, these acts were those of a friend in their darkest hour. Evan's comfort was a twisted form of empathy, his presence a constant reminder of the man Mark believed him to be, not the monster he had become. He sat with them, shared in their vigils, offered updates on the search, all while knowing the futility of their hope. He kept them close, not out of compassion but to monitor, to guide their grief, ensuring it never turned toward suspicion of him. To Karen Carter, his wife, and Sophie, his daughter, he spun tales of a busy sheriff doing all he could, explaining his distractions, his long hours, his preoccupation with work. They saw a man stretched thin by duty, not one haunted by guilt. Evan managed his double life with the same skill he used in his professional one, keeping his family in the dark, their trust in him unshaken. For weeks, Evan's orchestration of the search and his proximity to the Thompsons kept the investigation from ever finding its true path. The community's trust in him, built over years, now worked in his favor, blinding them to the possibility that the very man leading the search might be the one who ended it. But every lie, every manipulation, was a thread in a web that was growing more fragile with each passing day. As time wore on, the cracks in his story began to show, the weight of his secrets becoming too heavy to bear without a sign of unraveling. Months had passed since Lila Thompson vanished, the town's collective hope dimming with each day, the case sliding towards becoming another cold file in the sheriff's office. But the truth, like a seed buried too shallow, was destined to sprout when least expected. It was two hunters, seeking solace in the quiet of the forest, who stumbled upon the grim discovery that would reignite the case. Deep in a secluded area, where the trees whispered secrets to each other, they found the earth disturbed, and beneath it, the body of Lila Thompson, hidden from the world but not from justice. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town, transforming the quiet search into an active investigation once more. The area was immediately secured, forensic teams dispatched to uncover the secrets the forest had held. As they worked, the layers of deception began to peel away. Among the dirt and foliage, they found more than just Lila's remains, they uncovered evidence that would start to weave a noose around Evan Carter. The investigation, now under the scrutiny of outside detectives, began to piece together the puzzle. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the edge of town on the night Lila disappeared was retrieved, showing Evan's vehicle with Lila in the passenger seat, her form slumped, her life already slipping away. The footage did not just place Evan with Lila, it painted a chilling picture of her last moments in his company. Further, the detectives delved into the digital breadcrumbs. GPS data from Evan's truck, which he hadn't anticipated anyone examining, provided a damning trail. The logs matched the path from the gas station to the remote forest area where Lila was found. Each turn, each stop, was documented, a silent testament to his journey with her, from life to death. Physical evidence at the scene was just as incriminating. A small vial, buried but not hidden enough, bore the faint trace of Evan's fingerprint, a piece of evidence that tied him directly to the act of drugging Lila. The forensic team, with meticulous care, extracted every piece of evidence, from fibers of clothing to the composition of the soil, each finding pointing back to Evan. The autopsy revealed not just the cause of death but also the shocking truth of Lila's pregnancy, adding another layer of motive to Evan's actions. This revelation transformed the case from a missing person and murder into a story of betrayal, abuse of power, and the chilling lengths one would go to protect their secrets. As the evidence accumulated, it became clear that Evan had not just led the search as a cover, he had meticulously planned every step of his crime and its concealment. The manipulation of the investigation, the proximity to the Thompson family, all were calculated moves in a game he thought he controlled. But with each piece of evidence, the narrative shifted, and the town began to see not a leader but a suspect. The hunters, unaware of the storm their discovery would unleash, had unwittingly turned the tide. The truth, which Evan believed was buried with Lila, was now being unearthed, piece by piece, leading to the inevitable confrontation with justice. The web of lies spun by Evan Carter was beginning to unravel, revealing the dark truth beneath the badge he wore. The trial of Sheriff Evan Carter became the focal point of the community, a theater where the drama of betrayal and justice unfolded. The courtroom was filled to capacity, the air thick with anticipation as the narrative of manipulation, murder, and cover-up was laid bare before the eyes of the law and the public. Courtroom drama was at its peak as the prosecution laid out their case with forensic precision, painting a picture of a man who used his badge as a shield to commit the most heinous acts. They introduced evidence that spoke louder than any words could: surveillance footage, GPS data, and the damning vial with Evan's fingerprint, all linking him irrefutably to Lila's murder. The narrative was of a calculated descent into darkness by a man once trusted by all. Emotional testimonies began to unravel the human cost of Evan's actions. Mark Thompson, Lila's father, took the stand, his voice breaking under the weight of his grief. He spoke of the trust he had placed in Evan, how he had stood beside him, searching for his daughter, never suspecting the man he called friend was the one who had taken her away. His words were raw, filled with the pain of betrayal, his testimony a lament for a daughter lost to a man he had once respected. Lila's mother, her voice a whisper of sorrow, shared the dreams her daughter had, the life she was supposed to live, the child she would never know. Her testimony was not just about loss but about the violation of trust by someone sworn to protect. The courtroom felt the weight of her mourning, the tragedy of a future stolen. Then came the testimonies from Evan's own family, adding a layer of personal tragedy to the legal proceedings. Karen Carter, his wife, spoke in disbelief, her words a testament to a marriage built on lies. She recounted the moments she now saw in a different light, the excuses, the late nights, the distance that had grown between them, all under the shadow of her husband's secret life. Her testimony was one of a woman grappling with the realization that the man she loved was a stranger. Sophie Carter, Evan's daughter, provided perhaps the most heart-wrenching testimony. Her voice trembled as she spoke of losing not just her best friend but also the father she thought she knew. She described the betrayal she felt, the confusion, the pain of learning her father was capable of such darkness, her words painting a picture of a family shattered by the actions of one man. As the trial progressed, the defense tried to salvage what they could, but the evidence was overwhelming. Finally, when it was Evan's turn to face the questioning, the room held its breath. At first, he attempted to maintain his composure, his denials a continuation of his lies. But under the relentless questioning, the weight of his actions, the undeniable evidence, and the moral pressure of the courtroom, his defenses crumbled. The confession came in a moment of stark clarity, his voice barely above a whisper, his shoulders sagging under the burden of guilt. Yes, he admitted, his words a confession to the affair, to the murder, to using his position to manipulate and destroy. He spoke of fear, of the desperation to protect his life, his career, but as he spoke, it was clear he was also confronting the horror of what he had done. His confession was not just an admission of guilt but a breaking point, a moment where the man behind the badge could no longer hide from his actions. The courtroom sat in stunned silence, the reality of his betrayal echoing in the air. With his confession, the trial moved towards its inevitable conclusion, a conclusion that would bring some measure of justice for Lila Thompson and a reckoning for Evan Carter. The sentencing phase of Evan Carter's trial was the final act in this tragic drama, where justice was to be served with a weight that matched the crimes committed. The judge, with a gravity that reflected the community's sorrow and the law's resolve, addressed the courtroom. He spoke of the grievous nature of Evan's actions, the abuse of power, the betrayal of trust, and the irreversible damage inflicted on not just one but two lives, Lila Thompson's and her unborn child's. In a voice that carried the solemnity of the moment, the judge declared Evan Carter guilty of first-degree murder, abuse of authority, and gross misconduct. The sentence was life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a finality that ensured Evan would spend the rest of his days behind bars, haunted by the lives he had taken. The gavel strike was not just an end to the trial but a punctuation on a chapter of deceit and loss. The aftermath of the trial left scars on both families involved. For Mark and his wife, the pain of losing Lila was compounded by the betrayal of a man they had considered family. Yet, from this tragedy, they drew strength to honor her memory. They established the Lila Thompson Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting young women who had been victims of abuse, particularly those manipulated by figures of authority. The foundation offered legal aid, counseling, and mentorship, turning their grief into a beacon of hope for others. Their mission was to ensure that no other family would suffer as they had, to give voice to those who felt voiceless. The impact on the Carter family was equally profound but in a different light. Karen Carter, confronted with the reality of her husband's actions, found herself in a shattered world. The revelation of Evan's affair, the murder, and the unborn child he had fathered with Lila was too much to bear in the town where every corner held a memory of the man she thought she knew. She decided to move away, taking Sophie with her, seeking a new beginning far from the echoes of scandal and betrayal. Sophie, once vibrant with the innocence of youth, was now navigating life with the heavy burden of her father's crimes. The move was a chance to heal, to redefine who she was outside of her father's shadow. She and her mother embarked on a journey of healing, one that would take years, filled with therapy, new beginnings, and the slow process of rebuilding trust in themselves and the world around them. For the community, the trial and its outcome were a stark reminder of the fragility of trust in those who hold power. The sheriff's department underwent significant changes, with new leadership, reforms, and a commitment to transparency and accountability. The town's narrative shifted, where once there was blind faith in authority, there now was a demand for integrity, for systems that could prevent such abuses. The legacy of this tragedy was one of lessons learned, of a community striving to heal and prevent future betrayals. The story of Evan Carter would be told not just as a tale of crime but as a cautionary narrative about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of vigilance. The sentencing of Evan Carter was not the end but a point of reflection, moment ere the town looked back at what was lost and forward to what could be done to ensure it never happened again. In the wake of the trial's conclusion, the community was left to reflect on the profound betrayal they had experienced. The trust once freely given to those in uniform was now questioned, leading to a demand for reform within the sheriff's department. New leadership was appointed, individuals committed to not only law enforcement but also to restoring the faith of the community. Policies were overhauled, creating a framework where transparency and accountability were not just buzzwords but foundational principles. The reforms were comprehensive. Mandatory training on ethics, integrity, and the proper use of authority became standard, with an emphasis on understanding the impact of power dynamics. Internal affairs were strengthened, with clear protocols for handling complaints against officers, ensuring no one was above scrutiny. Community policing was reimagined, focusing on building genuine relationships rather than just maintaining order, fostering an environment where the public felt heard and respected. The legacy of Lila Thompson became a poignant reminder of the potential for authority to be abused. Her story, once a private tragedy, was now a public lesson. The town embraced this narrative, turning it into a catalyst for change. Community awareness programs were established, often in partnership with the Lila Thompson Foundation, aimed at educating both the youth and adults about the dangers of manipulation by those in power. Schools began to incorporate lessons on personal safety, recognizing abuse, and the importance of speaking up. Workshops were held regularly, discussing scenarios where authority figures might overstep, teaching young people how to navigate such situations safely. These programs also encouraged dialogue between law enforcement and the community, breaking down barriers and fostering mutual respect. The story of Lila also sparked initiatives for mentorship that was transparent and accountable. Instead of private, one-on-one sessions that could be misused, community-led mentorship programs were introduced where multiple stakeholders were involved, ensuring safety and openness in guiding the youth towards their aspirations. Lila's name became synonymous with vigilance against the abuse of power. Her story was shared not in whispers of fear but in discussions of prevention and empowerment. Murals, memorials, and annual events were dedicated to her memory, each serving as a reminder of what can happen when vigilance is lost, and a call to action to prevent it. Through these efforts, the community sought to heal, to learn, and to ensure that Lila's tragedy would lead to a safer, more aware society. The reforms within the Sheriff's Department and the educational outreach were steps toward rebuilding trust, but they also served as a testament to the community's resilience and commitment to change. In remembering Lila, the town not only grieved but also grew, understanding that true legacy lies in the changes made in the face of adversity. Her story was no longer just one of tragedy but one of transformation, a narrative that continued to shape the community long after the trial had ended. In the quiet aftermath of the trial and the sweeping changes it inspired, the town found itself at a crossroads, pondering deep moral questions about the nature of protection and service. How does one safeguard against those sworn to protect? The betrayal by Evan Carter had shattered illusions, forcing the community to reconsider the very fabric of trust they had woven around their law enforcement. The reflection was not just on law but on the human condition, the capacity for individuals to misuse the power bestowed upon them. Discussions were held in town halls, in schools, in homes, questioning how to ensure that those in authority serve with integrity. There was a collective understanding that vigilance must extend beyond the courtroom into the daily lives of the community, that trust must be earned and continuously proven, not just given. This introspection led to a broader conversation about accountability, about the systems that need to be in place to check power. The town began to advocate for more community involvement in oversight, for mechanisms where voices could be heard without fear of retribution. They realized that the protection of rights and well-being could not solely be left to those in uniform but required an active, engaged citizenry. The call to action that emerged from this tragedy was clear and urgent. The community was encouraged to remain vigilant, to question, to hold those in power accountable. Workshops, community watches, and educational campaigns were not enough. There was a need for ongoing dialogue, for a culture where questioning authority was not just accepted but expected. The message was clear: to prevent abuses of power, society must be as proactive in its oversight as the individuals are in their roles. This story of betrayal, once localized to one town, became a broader narrative, a reminder across regions that the abuse of power is not an isolated incident but a systemic issue that requires collective action. The story of Lila Thompson was shared beyond their borders, used as a case study in how complacency can lead to tragedy and how awareness and action can lead to change. The legacy of this event was not just in the reforms or the foundation in Lila's name but in the awakening it caused. It set the stage for more stories to be told, for more truths to come to light, for more communities to question the status quo. The call was for everyone to be a guardian of justice, not just those with badges, to ensure that the line between protector and predator is never blurred again. In closing this chapter, the town did not just mourn, it moved forward with a resolve, recognizing that while one story had ended, the narrative of vigilance against the abuse of power was ongoing. They understood that the only way to truly honor those lost to such betrayals was to ensure that their stories would serve as beacons for change, encouraging all to never stop questioning, to never stop demanding accountability, because in the light of such scrutiny, darkness cannot prevail.